one of the best things about camp, or at least one of my fondest memories of camps, were pranks and raids. Now, this story takes place when I was a youth. So this was before my time as a youth leader and youth pastor. I was a sophomore in high school during this time. And I grew up Catholic, but my friend invited me to go with her youth group to a summer camp this particular year. So I decided to go, and it was about midweek at this time. And we were in what's called a yurt. If you don't know what a yurt is, it's a hybrid between a teepee and a cabin. And where our yurt was located was right at the very end of the campground. So if you can visualize for a second as if here's the campground and our yurt is at the very top. So we were the last dwelling section of the entire campsite. And in the yurt, there was a dozen bunks. I had the bottom bunk and I was right next to the door. And it was cabin time. And cabin time was at the end of the day. We would get together with our youth leader and talk about how the day went or what we found profound that day or what we enjoyed the most that day. And it was our youth group, the boys from our youth group, as well as the boys from another youth group. And we were going through our cabin time, and I'm laying down in my bunk and right next to the door, and along the wall, there's a hole that I can see out into the campground. So I can see pretty much the entire campground from where I am through this little hole. And there were talks or rumors going about that there was going to be a raid happening that night. So I was on watch duty because I had that little hole I can see right through. And it was near the end of cabin time where all of a sudden I hear a bunch of footsteps. Like footsteps running toward us. I look out the hole and all I see is a dozen guys charging our yurt and flashlights flashing and everything. And I see this coming and I yell, "Raid!" At that time, all the boys in my yurt, we get up and we start gathering, and through that hole, a hand reaches in and starts I think it was shaving cream, but starts shooting shaving cream. I grab that hand, and he's trying to pull out, and I'm just like holding on to that hand, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I'm trying to pull that hand into the yurt, or pulling him into the wall. And the cabins, they don't have locks on them for security reasons. So guys start barricading the doors so people couldn't get in. So we're grabbing everything that we can. I grabbed a bottle of shaving cream myself because that was the first thing I grabbed out of my bag. Everyone grabbed pillows, shaving cream, gel, deodorants, everything you can get, we got it. So we opened the door and we charged out. And there's 10 of us in our yurt, and we just go out, and now whoever is around, I got my shaving cream, I'm putting it all in my hand, I'm like slapping the faces, whoever comes near me, I'm getting dirt thrown on me, I'm getting pillows slugged and swung at me, and I'm looking, my brother grabbed a bag of potato chips, and he's just going over the head of people, and then reaching into that bag and throwing those crumbs in people's faces. People are throwing dirt, and this is going on for about a whole minute, roughly. And then all of a sudden, security comes up, they have their whistles, and they're like, break it up. And these guys, they go running, and then we have to deal with the aftermath of what happened. So we talk with the security. We're like, we think these guys are from this cabin here. So they charged us, and that's what happened, and we were just defending ourselves. So then we come back in, cleaning ourselves off. I got gel and deodorant powder and dirt all over me, and we're just cleaning up. Now, that wasn't the end of it. We needed to get back. We needed to get even with them. And our cabin leader, who was a youth leader from my church, who was also the worship director at my church at the time, or of the church that I was visiting, he was a former Marine. So we began to strategize our payback, our revenge raid. Now, one of our other youth leaders was the rec director of the camp. And he found out which cabin it was that raided us. Now, as a punishment for that cabin, they were on lockdown, if you will. So after a certain time, they had to be in their cabin and they could not come out. They can come out to use the restroom, but they had to be escorted by one of their youth leaders. But the youth leader of ours that was on security found out which cabin they were in. Now, he had the night shift. So it was him and another person. And our youth leader who was on security was in on our plan to get revenge. But the other one was not. So we enlisted the help of some of the girls from the youth group to help us out and kind of create a diversion. So we're strategizing how we're going to get back at them. And our youth leader / cabin leader, being a former Marine, he's giving us all assignments. He's telling us how to walk around the camp without being detected, how to enter, where to exit, and how to get back. And we all had a specific job. Now, one person was designated to be like the decoy. And he and his girlfriend, who was a girl, his girlfriend they were supposed to kind of distract the security just by like walking hand in hand after hours. So kind of draw their attention, security, and say, hey, you two should not be walking this by yourself this late at night around the campground. And then what happened was they would do that, and they would take that security guard to a further part of the camp. Because we found out that our yurt was up here, like I mentioned up here, and the cabin was somewhere kind of like down there. So, you can't really tell the difference, but a little ways away, and we're just surrounded by woods everywhere else. So the guy and his girlfriend would kind of like lure the security the furthest away from us. And then when they got to that point, our youth leader, who was also on security, would say, hey, we need to go look at something at this part of the camp, taking him even further away from where the raid was about to happen. So we all get the jobs. I was on rope duty because, like I mentioned earlier, that these cabins, yurts, they didn't have locks. They opened inward, though. Now, we had guys who were on ketchup and mustard duty. So they were given a bottle of ketchup and a bottle of mustard. How did we get them again? Our youth leader, who was also on security, was able to get into the kitchen and get us those squirt bottles of ketchup and mustard. And they were the first ones to go in. So right when the doors opened, they would go in and start squirting everyone, and it was continual movement. Every guy who goes in, they do their job while running out. So we had two guys on ketchup and mustard duty, and their job was just to squirt everything around. Get as much ketchup and mustard out of there. The next guy, or the next couple of people, we filled Ziploc baggies with vinegar. So that way we would fling the Ziploc baggies, and whether they would open up on impact or open up in the air, however well, the goal was just to spread vinegar everywhere. So we got vinegar, all that, and then we had baby powder. So then the guys were going in with baby powder and baby oil, and then two other guys were going in with bird seed and glitter. And then, of course, then we had two other guys with shaving creams. And my goal was to be outside tying on a rope onto the doorknob, and another guy was tying the other door as well. That way, the second we get out, and the goal was to get out as quick as possible, and we had an order, that way by the time our guys saw our last person get out was to tie the door. And once we tied the door, they couldn't open it because both doors would enter and the ropes would prevent the doors from opening. So it's now about 3 a.m. in the morning, and we get up and we start making our way around the camp, and we're as quiet as possible. I can't remember how quiet it's been. It's hard when you're walking through trees and twigs and leaves, but we're as quiet as we possibly can because we don't want to draw any attention to what we're about to do and where we're going. Now, the decoy couple has already done their job, and the security guard is now far away from where the raid is going to take place. Now, we see the cabin, and me and the other guy who was on the rope duty, we go in first and talk about the pressure here, because I have to get up to that door as quiet as possible and begin tying a knot. If I made one sound too loud that woke up whoever was in there, the whole raid was botched. So I'm walking up, I'm tying the knob to the entry door. As soon as that knot is tied nice and tight, the guy begins to quietly take his side of the rope around, and we're not quite tying it yet, but is ready. I then fling the door open, and our guys go in. We got the ketchup, the mustard, the vinegar, the baby oil, the glitter, the birdseed, the shaving cream, all going in. Those guys are going in, out, in and out, in and out, one right after the other. And it's just commotion and chaos inside that cabin. And I don't know how it happened, but we all made it out without anyone being grabbed or anything. They just shot in and shot out so quickly. We got rid of all of our things, and as soon as that last guy took out, that guy tied his knot, we close the door and we take off with them. Now, we hear a whistle in the background, so we know that security guard hears the commotion, hears all the the yelling and all that's going on, and he begins to run back this way. So we can't go back through the campsite. We have to go around through the woods and get back up to our yurt. Now, we were lucky because the security guard spent time letting these guys out and trying to find out what happened, getting information. And I don't think they knew who we are, because I forgot to mention at the beginning is that we made masks out of shirts. We hid our identities very well. And we didn't make very much noise. We just went, ah! We were just doing a bunch of yelling. So we're going through the woods, and we can still see the campsite from where we're at. And we're like being as quiet as we can again, crawling through the woods. And we know that we need to get back to our yurt, because if that security guard gets to that yurt and we're not there, then it's quite obvious who did that. Now, we're making our way as quickly as possible, and all of us is scattered. Now, again, we were a team of about 10, 12 guys. So we all scattered, and we're all making it. We all get back at one time or another. So we get back into our yurt. We get into our sleeping bags. We get under the blankets. We're trying to dab all the sweat. We're trying to catch our breath. And then not too soon after we get back in, the security guard enters and looks around. And we're just like really controlling our breathing, because we don't want him to think that we were just running or doing anything like that. And then he's looking around, and then he just walks out. And we wait a moment, and we get up, and we do kind of like a roll call. Like we say, because it's dark, So we just start saying our names and like who's here, who's not. One guy is missing. So one of the boys did not make it back. And we're like, uh-oh, where is he? And now it's about 3:45 in the morning now, and we don't know where he is. So we're like, great, now we have to do a search party. So now we go out in teams of like 2, and we're like looking for him. And some of us were like navigating through the campsite. Some of us are out on the rec fields. A few of us are going in through the wilderness area around the camp. Now, I did not find him, but we did end up finding him. He threw a bunch of moss and dirt and leaves all over him to conceal himself from getting caught. And when we saw him, he was walking back with the people who found him. And we're just like, what were you doing? Why didn't you come right back? We were so nervous. We were afraid something might have happened to you. But the next day or the next morning, we go to the cafeteria. It is now breakfast time, and it is now the last day of camp. So any chance for retaliation from this other cabin was impossible because we were going home in a couple hours. But that raid was the pretty much the talk or the topic of the hour in that cafeteria. We heard people talking about, hey, did you hear about that raid that took place last night? Did you hear what happened to those guys in the cabins? Or we even heard those guys like, we knew it was you guys. We know it was you. It had to be you guys. And we just sat there eating our breakfast, all proud, because what I heard is we pulled off one of the most epic raids in the history of that camp. And we could not have done it without the tactical leadership of our former Marine youth leader, as well as the help of our other youth leader who was on security. So I hope you enjoyed that story of a very fond memory of a youth raid that happened when I was a sophomore in a youth group. Now, one of my goals is to start up camps and going back to camp. And I will make no promises that we will ever do a raid, or we will never not do a raid, or pranks, or all those other fun stuff that happen at camp. But anyway, hope you enjoyed that story. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you again later.